for the original webinar via our YouTube page. We appreciate your time today, and we will try to be very respectful of your time. Today's webinar, including the question and answer session at the end of the webinar, should be approximately 30 minutes long. My name is Sean Minton. I'm a Territory Manager for Electronic Data Solutions. I'm based out of Sacramento, California. So for folks who are interested in this technology in California, Oregon, Alaska, and Washington State, I would be your primary contact. And there's my contact information on the home page. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the products that Teledyne RDI puts out in terms of acoustic Dopplers, but you may not be as familiar with electronic data solutions. We are a company that specializes in many, many things. This is really kind of that true American story of the husband and wife starting the company literally in the garage of their house. Linda and David Dean started this company almost 30 years ago, and we do a lot of different things. Obviously, we are big into water resources like acoustic Dopplers and pressure transducers, water quality instrumentation, telemetry. But we have a whole nother side of our company where we do GIS, GPS services. We do a lot when it comes to mobile solutions in the field using tablets and smartphones and high accuracy GPS to go out and kind of map the world. And we also have a large rental department. We do custom software as well. We're mostly a West Coast company. We've got offices here in Sacramento, Portland, Olympia, Washington. We've got an office in Missoula, Montana, a couple of offices in Idaho, and then we also have an office down in Utah in a town called Liberty, Utah. In terms of my background personally, I am a graduate of Washington State University. I've been married for about 14 years now, and I have a 4-year-old son. That's a picture of him right there. He's my pride and joy. He's the reason I get up every morning and go to work. I've been selling data collection devices for field use for, gosh, over 15 years now. I've been with Electronic Data Solutions. This slide may actually be a little outdated. I think I'm going on almost 10 years with these guys. So it's been a great relationship. We have great solutions, and we try to do a lot of things to really make our customers happy. I'd say the one place that we really excel is technical support and customer service. Once you purchase something from us, we don't close the door and say thank you. We have a full technical support staff, and whether it's the water resources solutions or the GPS, GIS solutions, we can definitely help you out. So I'm not big on reading bullet points. I'll kind of let you take your time and read this as quickly or as slowly as you can. But we've created solutions around vector control for mosquitoes. I spend a lot of time out in landfills with methane detection devices. We're also getting into drone technology, which is a subject of its own that I'm sure we'll probably be doing some webinars on here in the future. But really what I kind of tell people is if you have any application where you're looking for equipment for data collection in the field, call us first. And I'm the type of guy where if I can't help you, if it's not a solution that we sell, I'll point you to the right direction, even if it's one of our competitors. We just want to make sure you're happy and that you get what you're looking for. So throughout the webinar, we're going to have a couple of different polls. We do the polls for a couple of reasons. One, just to make sure you're paying attention. But two, we really want to make sure that we understand why you're attending today's webinar and what your needs are. And based on the poll questions, it kind of gives us a better understanding of why you took 30 minutes out of your day today to learn a little bit more about the River Pro. So let's go ahead and we'll launch our first poll question of the day, and that's what are you currently using to measure flow and discharge? So if you'll take just 30 seconds here and answer this as quickly as we can, we'll show you the results real quickly, and then we'll get on with the webinar for the River Pro ADCP. Excellent. Looks like just about everybody's voted. In fact, everybody has voted. I'll go ahead and show folks the results of this, and wow, it's cut really right down the middle in terms of what you're using. We've got folks using competitive products, ADCPs, and of course, there is the standard price meter, current meter. Those are there's still a ton of them out there. They still serve a very valuable purpose, and people still love them, especially for shallow water solutions. We'll have a couple more polls a little bit later on in the webinar as well. But let's talk about the River Pro ADCP. This is really, you know, when I say latest and greatest, I don't use that haphazardly. RDI has been doing this for a long time. I think the original Stream Pro ADCP came out in 1991 or maybe 1993. So they have a long history, and they've learned a lot in all of the years that they've been doing this kind of technology. So the River Pro is really a culmination of everything they've learned, where they see the future of the business going, and it's got a lot of neat features. So I may have mentioned this at the top of the webinar. This is a very 10,000-foot overview of what this device is capable of. I spent maybe the first 4 or 5 months of the year going out and doing nothing but demoing this device to Department of Water Resources, USGS offices, private consultants. I spent a lot of time in the field with this device, and almost every single person who saw it, there was a huge wow factor to it. And we'll get into specifically why there is that big wow factor. But just understand this is a very high overview of what this device is capable of. It's got a terrific range, and it's anywhere from around 10 to 12 inches of minimal depth to up to about 70, 75 feet on the high end. So it fits nicely between the kind of shallow water solution that is the Stream Pro and then our deep water solution, which is the River Ray. We'll talk about this a little bit later on in the webinar. There's an upgrade path right now. If you currently have one of the older Rio Grande 1200s and maybe you haven't used it for a while, maybe it's sitting on a shelf because technologies have changed, or maybe you don't like getting out there and setting bottom modes, water modes, etc. You don't like all the cords all over the place. There's actually an upgrade path to take your existing Rio Grande 1200 and converting it into one of the new River Pros. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. So what's different about the River Pro? Well, unlike some of our other ADCPs, one of the really truly great things about the River Pro is its beam angle. So you've got 4 beams. Let's see, I'm not an expert with my drawing tools, but I'm going to give it my best shot here. So you've got this one, this one, this one. You've got your 4 beams, and then you've got your true vertical beam here right in the middle. You have a 20-degree beam angle. Older Rio Grandes and some of our other transducers are 30-degree beam angles, but having this shooting more as a straight down pattern, as is indicated right here in this diagram, allows you to get closer to the edge so that when you are setting your edge data, you can be much more specific and you can feel good that it's not extrapolating so much on the edges. It's actually getting right, just kind of nubbing right up to the edge of whether it's a canal or a stream or whatever you may have. And of course, what's really great is that the 5th beam, the true vertical beam right in the middle. It's a 600 kilohertz beam. It's going to shoot straight down and give you true depth and true vertical velocities, which is actually, believe it or not, brand new for Teledyne RDI. They haven't had that capability, and they have finally kind of come around and seen the light, and now they have that capability on the River Pro, which is really nice. It looks like, and I don't know if folks out there can see this, the lines that I drew, apparently they want to stay up there. So I guess I'm going to have to fight through that, and I won't do any more lines. The other really cool thing, one of the other neat features about this is it has an embedded GPS. People get really excited when they see that because they're thinking, fantastic, RTK, bottom tracking. I know exactly where I am in the water and how deep the water is, and if I'm in moving bed, you know, they get really excited about that. And then I kind of have to say, whoa, 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 slow your roll. The embedded GPS, this is important to note, is for georeferencing only. It's only going to show you where you were on the river. So if you need an RTK solution, we have that. And you can basically turn off the internal GPS, put your RTK unit on there, and you're good to go. And one of the things that has always kind of differentiated us from the competition is the fact that we use GPS units. You know, we use a lot of over-the-counter type products. So, you know, you can use a Trimble, you can use a Hemisphere. Whatever the RTK system or GPS system you're using will work with you to set up the proper mount for that. I know a lot of times with our competition, you know, they have a kind of a proprietary system where basically use our GPS or you can't use anything. RDI has never been like that, whether it's a battery or a switch or whatever. It's the type of stuff where If you find, oh no, my battery's dead, or you have a situation like that, you can go to a Fry's Electronics, or I was going to say Radio Shack, that's a bad example, but anywhere that has 12-volt batteries, and you can just buy one and put it in. Nothing about this is proprietary. The auto-adaptive sampling is something that they came up with in the River Ray, which is kind of a previous model that RDI came up with a couple of years ago. Auto-adaptive sampling is pretty simple. It allows you to put the boat in the water, set your edge data, and go. There's no bottom modes, there's no water modes, there's no need to set individual cell sizes, because what happens is it will adjust cell sizes on the fly. The deeper the water gets, the larger the cells will get. So you'll see your individual cells up at the surface will kind of remain constant, but as you get deeper and deeper in the water, especially if you're in water 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, you'll actually be able to see those cells getting larger and larger based on the depth of the water. And the reason they do that is because sometimes you're going to have summer interns, you're going to have seasonal workers, that you may consider yourself an expert when it comes to ADCPs. I mean, I know how to set bottom modes, tracking, I know how to go in and tweak the software, but maybe not everybody in your organization knows how to do that. And maybe you've got to send somebody out to do some discharge readings who is only going to be there for a few months. Well, with something like auto-adaptive sampling, it gives them the ability to go out, quickly get that boat in the water, take some readings, take their transects, and then move on to the next site. Very nice, and allows you to very quickly get in and out of the water. Think of flood events, things like that, where you don't have a lot of time to sit there on the shore and be messing around with software and modes and things like that. Auto-adaptive means, bam, get that thing in the water, take your readings, and get on to the next site. But, and this is really where we differentiate ourselves from the competitor, and really where RDI, I think, hit a home run. You have that auto-adaptive sampling. I just want to get this boat in the water. I want to take my transects, and I want to leave. But again, we know with the USGS, the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Water Resources, we know there are super users out there that have been using these devices for 20 years. They don't like necessarily auto-adaptive sampling. They like to go in there, especially when you're doing modeling and you need those cells to be consistent. You need that data to be consistent from top to bottom. They like to go in there and they like to tweak things and work a little bit more than, say, maybe your summer intern or your seasonal worker. For those people, I really think the River Pro hits a home run. Whatever you need in terms of modes, when you're thinking modes, again, we're thinking about the older Rio Grande, your bottom modes, your river modes. You can actually go in and do that with the River Pro as well. So whether you're a super user, I've been using these things for 20 years, or you're a summer intern, I've never touched one of these things in my life, the River Pro delivers for both types of user. Now this is pretty important too. Let's say you have a River Ray, or let's say you have an older Rio Grande with the trimaran, and you're thinking, well, look, I don't want to have to go out and buy a brand new boat. I've had my River Ray for 3 years. I really like it, but I'm the type of guy who, when the new technology comes out, I like to take advantage of it. The other really cool thing about the River Pro is it'll fit right inside the River Ray trimaran. So if you've got a system already, now you've got not only the River Ray for kind of deeper water applications, now you'll have the River Pro for that kind of in-between, anywhere from, say, a foot to 70, but you can use the same float. That's going to save you $3,000 or $4,000. So, when you're approaching the purchasing people, your procurement officers, whoever the money people are, and you're saying, hey, there's this new device out there. It looks pretty awesome. I'd love to have one. You can kind of throw that in as a bonus. Now, we already have this one, but we can use the same float. A lot of times that's the difference, especially for a procurement person, between yes, you can get it, and no, you can't get it. And trust me, I know that because I've sold 3 River Pros already this year with just the device, without the float, because they already had a River Ray float. They just wanted to upgrade to the current model. So really, trust me, that really does make a difference. So when we look at the body of work for RDI and what they offer in their water resources catalog, if you will, for shallow water applications, you've got the Stream Pro ADCP. For deep water applications, you've got the River Ray, and then you'll see right in the middle there, the River Pro ADCP kind of hits that shallow range for the most part, but then also has a pretty decent range on the other end too. It really, I'd say for my customers on the West Coast, the River Pro hits 90% of their applications. Yes, You're going to sometimes get into tiny, tiny streams. Maybe that's a current meter situation. And yes, sometimes you're going to have raging rivers like the Columbia River or the Willamette River, something like that, where maybe you do really need that river rate. For the most part, moderate streams, moderate canals, the River Pro is really the one that really hits the mark. Now again, I'm not someone who's going to go through this line by line, feature by feature, but I think it is kind of important to compare and contrast what the different benefits are of each system. So I'm going to leave this up for just a second, just so you can kind of see the differences and what's different and what's the same and things of that nature. The auto-adaptive mode is in both the River Ray and the Rio Grande. The Stream Pro, to borrow the phrase from the 70s song, solid as a rock. And the thing has been around forever with only minor modifications to it, and I still sell a ton of those things. People love the Stream Pro. All right, so I think I've left that up long enough. Let's go ahead and talk about the upgrade path. This is pretty important because, again, one of the most frustrating things, I remember when I started selling the River Rays, which came before the River Pro that we're showing you today, and people would always say to me, well, look, I've got this Rio Grande, it's done great, but yeah, I want to upgrade to the latest and greatest, but I got this thing sitting on my shelf, what am I going to do with it? Is there any trade-in? What can I do with this thing? And I almost always had to tell them, it could just be a really heavy paperweight because they just, they hadn't been using that technology. Well, now I can finally say to those people, we can take your existing Rio Grande 1200, and please note, at this point, it's only the 1200. We're not working with 600 yet, although we may get into that territory. But you can take that existing Rio Grande 1200, and we can actually convert it and turn it into a River Pro ADCP. So now you've got the embedded GPS, you've got the auto-adaptive mode, you've got all of those great features, and the best part of it is you can throw it right into your Rio Grande trimaran. You don't have to buy the latest and greatest when it comes to the trimarans because we're going to put it in your existing shell. We're going to basically change out the guts and give you everything that the River Pro has to offer, but we're going to put it in your existing Rio Grande shell, and that's terrific. And the other really cool thing about that is that upgrade path is about half the cost of what a new River Pro system would cost you. So as of today, the cost of the upgrade is $12,500. You send in your Rio, they convert it into a River Pro, you put it back into your Rio trimaran, and you are good to go. You've got the Bluetooth communication instead of all the radio wires all over the place. You're able to use the latest Wind River software, and it's got a 7 to 10 day turnaround. So I'll be honest with you, sometimes RDI is a little notorious for taking something in, especially for repairs, and maybe you see that thing 30 or 60 days later. They're really serious about this upgrade path, and they really want folks to take advantage of it. So when you send that device in, you're probably going to have it back in 2 weeks or less. And on top of that, they are offering a 10% discount for the upgrade through the end of the year. So you're taking away about $1,250 off the price of the existing, and I think it's $11,500. But that is only through the end of the year. So again, California, Oregon, Washington State, Alaska, please contact me in terms of the upgrade path and what it takes to do that. And then if you're in one of the mountain states, a coworker of mine, Steve Combe, for you, but this is just fantastic. And I am so happy that RDI decided to do this because the frustration level with people who had been using the Rio Grande, it was pretty high. And so this takes an existing device that you have and allows you to convert. Again, when you're going back to your procurement person, you're not saying, hey, I need $27,000 because I want this new device. You're saying, I need, if you do the upgrade special, I need $11,500. And it's going to take an older technology and turn it into a brand new technology. Again, I just think that's fantastic, and trust me, it makes my job a lot easier. So now that you know a little bit more about the River Pro, I'm going to go ahead and throw that second poll question at you. And that question is, of the features that I've showed you on the River Pro, which one did you find the most attractive? And maybe it's none of these, but just do your best to to choose one of the ones that we have on our poll question this morning. And just, by the way, we are almost wrapped up here. I'm going to do a real quick overview of the QView software, answer any questions that you might have, and like I say, my goal is to get you out of here by the bottom of the hour, and it looks like we're definitely on track to do that. So just waiting for a couple more people to vote here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close things out and share those results with you. And this is what I really like to see. I know that I've asked a good question when all of the answers are kind of spaced out, 33%, 50%, things like that. So that means that there are many features of this device that people like. Obviously, the ease of operation is something that everybody likes because everybody knows the frustration of trying to work with it. I mean, you get a new computer or you try to start using the cloud and you're just banging your head for 3 days because you can't figure out how to use it. I can generally take somebody with a River Pro and have them up and running within 30 to 45 minutes. That's not to say they know every little thing about it, but what that says is in a pinch, if you need to get that boat out on the water and you need to take measurements, I can show you how to do that in 30 or 45 minutes. I'm not sure you can say that with any other device that's out on the market right now. So I just want to very quickly go over QView software. You may be scratching your head saying, what in the world is QView software? So for some of our users, you're familiar with it. Maybe you haven't tried it out yet. But QView software, you know, in a sentence, gives you the ability to QA, QC your data on the fly. There have been a lot of times in my life, in the life of acoustic Dopplers, where people have gone out and thought that they got good data, and then they come back from the field, and it is nowhere near what they needed in terms of maybe the transects were not within 5% of total Q, maybe the edge data didn't work, maybe they had set the parameters up wrong, so that when they went out, they weren't collecting the same data as they thought they were seeing on the screen. The QView software solves all of that. What the QView software does is, so when you're setting up one of these devices, if you're familiar with the Wind River 2 software, you have to go in and set up your site name and water depth. You know, there's a few things that you have to set up once you get to the site. So the QView software helps walk you through that. And if it senses that you've made a mistake or you've left something blank, you'll get a little notice that says, hey, did you mean to leave this blank? And if you did, then you just walk right through it. But, you know, this is one of those things where you go, oh, man, I totally forgot to do that. Thank you, QView software. So it does that as you're setting it up. And then it will give you a report when you come back to the office that says you did this right, you did this right, you did this right. But the other really cool thing that it does is it's actually working in the background as you're taking your transect. So remember, the USGS, they have guidelines. You may have guidelines within your own organization about how long a transect needs to take, how much data needs to be collected, and you can pop that right into the QView software. And if you don't hit that threshold, then a notice comes up and says, hey, you know what? Your last transect was not within 5% of the transect that you previously took. So rather than having to figure that out later, it's going to set up these warnings for you. And the nice thing is, it kind of runs in the background. It's not like in your face all the time. And those notices really only come up when you've done something, you know, that's outside of what the parameters are that you check. So when you're doing things like compass calibration, moving bed tests, those kind of things, it's just going to make sure that you did it right. So again, remember how we were talking at the beginning of the webinar about, let's say you've got that summer intern or you've got that seasonal tech, you know, you've got somebody who's maybe out there for the first or second time. This guarantees that when they're setting up their QA/QC data, it's going to be perfect every time. And if it's not, it's going to alert them. Now, at that point, if they decide to look past that and continue on, there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is say, you didn't set this up right. You didn't calibrate your compass. Do you want to calibrate your compass? You didn't set your gauge height. All right, do you want to set your gauge height? So it tries not to be super intrusive, but just enough to kind of push you a little bit and say, is this the data that you want or not? When you're doing your measurements, your transect, I talked a little bit about that. It gives you the ability of, did I do my transects correctly? Were they within the proper percentages? And again, here's kind of the really cool thing about this is we have this kind of set up initially to cover USGS guidelines because we really do everything in tandem with the USGS when it comes to creating software, when we come up with new features. They buy so many of these devices from us that we're basically like, they'll say, we'd like you to add this, or we'll say, do you think this is a good idea? But let's say that your organization has its own system of measuring, and you don't want to go by USGS standards, you want to go by your own. It gives you the ability to set things up based on your organization. So you go in and maybe your organization says we need to do 5 transects instead of 4. Or maybe your organization says we need to be within 3% of total discharge from each transect. Whatever those guidelines are, you can go in and you can set them. And that's exactly what this slide is saying, even though I described it on the previous slide. But it's really cool. And like I say, it spits you out a nice report at the end and lets you know, hey, you know, and it's all color-coded. Green is good, yellow is and then red is you really should probably go back and redo that. It's not very expensive, and I will bet you that after 1 or 2 uses, it will have paid for itself, just the fact that you know that you're QA/QCing your data out in the field. So, you know, if you spend half a day to get out there and you're in some rocky area where you got to backpack that thing in, the last thing you want to do is spend an entire day out in the field and then come back and realize that there's some problems with your data. It's just, trust me, I have been there, and that is no fun. So we're just about wrapped up here, folks. I've got one more poll question to ask you. It's very, very simple. You don't have to do too much thinking about this one. Was the QView software, in your opinion, is that something that would help you out in the field as you QA/QC your data? I think people are getting the hang of this voting thing. The votes are coming through very quickly now, and everybody is in, so thank you very much. Shocker of all shocks, yes, almost 85% of you think that the QView software would be a good thing. So when I sell you a River Pro, you probably then will say to me, Sean, I would also like that QView software, 85% of you at least. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and like I say, I'm going to kind of just wrap things up here, and then we'll do some Q&A. One final thought, and I mentioned this at the top of the webinar, we want to be your total solutions provider when it comes to this kind of stuff. So field data collection, pressure transducers, water quality, high accuracy GPS, vector control for mosquitoes, whatever your data collection application is out in the field, we want to be the person, we want to be the company that helps you out with that. So whenever you have a question, I want to set up a telemetry system with Go. I want to set up a telemetry system with cellular. How do I get sub-meter accuracy out of my cell phone or my tablet? We can help you with all of those things. Again, my contact information, and what I'll do in the final, how much time do we have here? A couple of minutes left. I'll go ahead and I'm going to open up my question pane, and for those of you who have had any questions, I'm going to go ahead and I'll answer those. Let me hang on here just a sec. I'm going to open up a new pane. So a question, will the new cable match the old one? So if you're doing the upgrade, yes, the answer is yes. The cable for a Rio Grande or a River Ray, if you're talking about the power cable that goes into the top of the ADCP, will that match? The answer is yes. When we do the upgrade, we don't expect you to have to purchase a new cable as well. Is there a free trial for the QView software? Absolutely, there's a free trial. If you go to rdinstruments.com, you can download a full 30-day version of the software. They're not going to give you some little teaser where you only have these features and you don't have those features. They're going to give you the full meal deal for 30 days. So you can absolutely try it out. And then if you try it out in my territory, I'll get a ping from RDI saying, hey, Sean, call up this guy. He tried out the QView software. I'll get your thoughts on it, help you through it if you have any questions. I have one last question here, and that's what platform or float options are available for the River Pro. So the River Pro, you can use the River Ray float. You can use the River Pro float. You can put this on the, you can mount this to the side of a boat as well. So it doesn't really matter. The cable that comes with it is fairly short, but you can order a longer cable if you're doing stuff off the side of the boat. I know I go out with the USGS all the time, and here in California, the Department of Water Resources, and we do that stuff off the side of the boat all the time. They use something called a Kentucky mount in most cases to do that off the side of the boat, but if you've got your own system, then that's great too. You can also just take the float and attach it to the side of your boat. So you have the ADCP mounted in its trimaran, and then you just tie that off to the side of your boat, and there you're off and running. We do that all the time too. Can you change the depth reference from a single vertical beam to the average of the 4 beams? That is an excellent question, Brian, and I do not have the answer for you. What I can do is get in touch with Dan Murphy, RDI Technical Support, and ask him that question, and then get back to you with an answer. And I do not see any other questions. So folks, I really appreciate your time. And again, this is also going to be on our YouTube page later after we get it downloaded. So if you have any other questions, there's my contact information. We are really, really glad that you took 30 minutes out of your day to learn a little bit more about the River Pro. I hope the webinar was helpful. Again, we'll answer any other questions that you may have, either directly through email or through phone calls. Hope everybody has a good day, and we hope you'll come back for some of our future webinars as we have those out in the coming weeks and months. Thanks, everybody.